Kale Morrow had spent 15 years buying garbage from aliens, who thought humans were too stupid to know the difference between treasure and trash. And most days they were right. His ship, a beaten freighter called the Penny Ante, groaned through the atmosphere of Thesser Seddon's largest moon like an old man climbing stairs. And Kale listened to every creak and rattle with the patience of someone who had learned to love broken things. The auction house sat in the middle of a settlement that smelled like rust and regret. A low building made of salvaged metal where species from across 3 sectors came to sell what they no longer wanted and buy what others had thrown away. Kale liked these places because nobody expected anything from him here, and because sometimes, just sometimes, he found something worth finding. The auctioneer was a prelax, one of the ancient ones, with skin like cracked stone and eyes that had seen civilizations rise and fall like waves on a shore. And when Kale walked in, the prelax looked at him the way all the elder species looked at humans, like he was watching a child play with toys meant for adults. Lot 47, the prelax announced, his voice dry as desert wind. Unidentified cultural objects. Species extinct, origin unknown, approximately 900,000 years old by carbon dating. No functional value detected by any known method. A hover platform floated forward carrying a collection of items that looked like they had been scraped from the bottom of a forgotten museum. And among the broken pottery and corroded metal, Kale spotted a sphere about the size of his fist. Dark and covered in a pattern that reminded him of scales. Nobody else bid 12 credits, Kale said. And the prelax made a sound that might have been laughter, sold to the human. May it bring you the same fortune it brought the last 100 owners. Kale collected his lot and carried it back to the Penny Ante without looking at what he had bought, because looking too eager made other species curious. And curious aliens asked questions that led to complications. Only when the ship had lifted off and the moon had shrunk to a pale dot behind him did Kale sit down in his cargo hold and examine his purchase. The sphere was heavier than it looked, and the scale pattern was not carved into the surface but seemed to be part of the metal itself, rising and falling like the skin of something alive. And when Kale held it up to the light, he could see colors moving beneath the dark surface. Colors that had no names in any human language. He had seen 1,000 strange objects in his years of salvage work, and most of them turned out to be exactly what they appeared to be: junk from dead civilizations, pretty but useless, good for nothing but decorating the shelves of collectors who had more money than sense. But this sphere felt different in a way he could not explain, like it was waiting for something. Like it had been waiting for a very long time. Kale turned it over in his hands, and his thumb brushed against one of the scales. And the universe changed. The scales moved. They shifted under his touch like a living thing waking from sleep. And light began to bleed from the cracks between them. Golden light that filled the cargo hold and cast shadows that danced on the walls like flames. Kale tried to drop the sphere, but his hands would not obey him. And then a voice spoke inside his mind, a voice older than stars. Vast and deep and somehow surprised. "Bearer," the voice said. "Keeper, you carry the old fire in your blood. I name you Drakenvar, he who inherits." The sphere unfolded in his hands like a flower blooming in fast motion, scales peeling back to reveal something that glowed with inner light. And Kale understood, without knowing how, that this was not a machine, not a tool, not an artifact at all. It was a seed, a compressed intelligence that had waited 900,000 years for someone to wake it up. "Who are you?" Kale whispered, and the voice answered with something like joy. "I am Vaelthrix, the last chronicler of the Cirith, keeper of histories, guardian of the inheritance. And I have searched for you across the long silence of ages." Kale knew the name Cirith. Everyone who traveled the stars knew that name. They were the Dragon Lords, the first great civilization, rulers of the galaxy when other species were still learning to use fire. And they had vanished without warning or explanation 900,000 years ago, leaving behind ruins and mysteries and questions that nobody had ever been able to answer. The Cirith are dead, Kale said. Everyone knows that. The Cirith are gone, Velthrix corrected gently. Gone is not the same as dead, but that is a story for another time. What matters now is you, Draconvar, you and your people. My people, Kale repeated. Humans, you mean humans? Yes, Velthrix said. And the light from the unfolded sphere formed images in the air around Kale. Images of a blue planet orbiting a yellow star. Images of creatures that walked on two legs and looked up at the sky and wondered what was out there. Your species was not an accident, Kale Morrow. You were not a random twist of evolution on an unremarkable world. What are you saying? I am saying that the Cirith planted you. We saw our end coming, and we prepared for it. We scattered inheritance spheres across the galaxy, and we seeded worlds with the potential for life. Life that would carry something in its blood that no other species possesses. Kale felt cold despite the warmth of the golden light. Cold down to his bones. Cold in places he did not know he had. What do we carry? The key, Velthrix answered. The biological signature that unlocks everything we left behind. Our ships, our weapons, our knowledge, our power. All of it waiting for the species that would inherit our fire. And that species is human. Millions of years passed. Hundreds of species found the inheritance spheres and tried to activate them. The Prelax tried, the Veth tried, the Orani tried. Every great civilization that rose after we departed tried to claim what we left behind. And all of them failed. The images changed, showing alien hands touching spheres identical to the one Kale held, showing those spheres remaining dark and cold and silent. Until you, Velthrix said. Until a human touched the scale skin and the old fire recognized itself. Kale looked down at his hands. Ordinary human hands that had spent years hauling cargo and counting credits and reaching for things just out of grasp. And he could not understand how these hands had done what the greatest species in the galaxy could not. Why us? He asked. We are nothing. We are a minor species. We have no power. No influence, no respect. The galaxy treats us like children. The galaxy is wrong, Velthrix said simply. The Cirith knew what we were looking for, and we found it in your kind, not strength. Not intelligence, not power, but something rarer. Something precious. What? The refusal to accept limits. The fire that burns even when everything says it should go out. You call it stubbornness. We called it the dragon spirit. And it is the reason you exist. Kale sat in silence for a long moment, holding the unfolded sphere in his trembling hands, feeling the weight of 900,000 years pressing down on his shoulders. What happens now? He finally asked. Velthrix's light pulsed with warmth that felt almost like a smile. Now, Draconvar, you learn what you have inherited. And then you show the galaxy that humanity is no longer asking for permission. Word traveled fast in the galaxy, faster than light, faster than thought. And within 3 weeks, every major species in the Galactic Concord knew that a human had done the impossible. Kale learned this when his communication system lit up with 17 urgent messages from Earth's diplomatic corps, 42 interview requests from alien news networks, and one very formal summons to appear before the Concord Assembly at Axis Primeval. You should have expected this, Velthrix said inside his mind. The chronicler's voice now a constant presence that Kale was slowly getting used to. The activation of an inheritance sphere is not a small thing. I am a salvage trader, Kale replied out loud, because thinking at the ancient intelligence still felt strange. I buy junk for a living. I was not prepared for galactic politics. No one ever is. But you must go to Axis Primeval. The Concorde will demand answers, and more importantly, they will demand the sphere. Kale looked at the artifact resting in its case, now folded back into its dormant form, but still warm to the touch. Still humming with power that only he could feel. And if I refuse to give it, then you will learn how the galaxy treats those who hold power they are not supposed to have. The journey to Axis Primeval took 6 days through regulated jump lanes. And Kale spent those days learning everything Velthrix could teach him about the Cirith, about the inheritance, about what humanity had unknowingly been created to receive. The Dragon Lords had ruled the galaxy for 300,000 years. Not through conquest, but through wisdom, building wonders that other species could barely comprehend. Maintaining peace through strength that was never cruel, never arbitrary, always tempered by mercy, and then they had seen something coming. Something Velthrix would not or could not describe. And they had prepared for their departure by creating the inheritance system spheres scattered across the galaxy. Caches of technology hidden in impossible places, shipyards sleeping inside dead stars. All of it waiting for the species that would carry their fire forward. 117 shipyards, Velthrix told him. 243 technology vaults. Countless smaller caches, enough to reshape the galaxy. And all of it keyed to human DNA. Kale could not wrap his mind around numbers that large. Could not imagine what humanity would do with that kind of power. Could not picture himself standing before the Concorde and claiming an inheritance that made the elder species look like children. But he went anyway. Because Velthrix was right. He did not have a choice. Axis Primeval hung in space like a mechanical flower. A station built from the combined efforts of 12 species over 10,000 years. The seat of galactic government. The place where decisions were made that affected trillions of lives across hundreds of worlds. Kale had seen pictures of it, but pictures did not capture the scale. The way it made his ship look like a speck of dust approaching a mountain. The way its lights seemed to pulse with power and importance and ancient authority. Earth's delegation met him at the docking port. 3 diplomats in formal suits who looked almost as nervous as he felt, led by Ambassador Chun. A woman with gray hair and tired eyes who had spent 30 years trying to earn humanity a voice in galactic affairs. "Mr. Morrow," she said, shaking his hand with a grip that was stronger than it looked. "I wish we were meeting under better circumstances." "So do I." "Ambassador, the Concorde Assembly has requested your presence." Requested is a polite word for demanded. The elder species are not happy. "I imagine they are not, Ambassador." Chun led him through corridors that seemed designed to make humans feel small. Past species that looked at him with curiosity and contempt and something that might have been fear, until they reached a chamber vast enough to hold 1,000 beings. With seats rising in tiers toward a ceiling lost in shadow, the assembly was already in session. Kale saw the Prolix delegation. Ancient beings of cracked stone who had been old when humanity's ancestors first stood upright. He saw the crystalline Veth, beautiful and cold. Light refracting through their bodies like living prisms. He saw the Orani, a hive mind speaking through a dozen identical bodies, moving in perfect synchronization, and he saw how they looked at the human delegation, the smallest group, the youngest species. The newcomers, who had somehow stumbled into something that was not meant for them. "The Assembly recognizes the human Kale Morrow," the Prelax speaker announced, his voice echoing through the chamber. "Bearer of the Cirith artifact, designated Inheritance Sphere 773. Kale stepped forward, feeling the weight of 1,000 alien eyes pressing down on him. "You have activated a relic that has remained dormant for 900,000 years. The Prolax continued. "A relic that the greatest minds of the Concorde have studied without success." "Explain how this was accomplished." Kale looked at the ancient being and felt something shift inside him. Something that might have been the dragonfire Velthrix had spoken of. Something that refused to bow. "I touched it," he said simply. It woke up. A ripple of sound moved through the assembly. Surprise and anger and disbelief. The sphere has been touched by thousands of beings across hundreds of species, the prelate said. It has never responded. It responded to me. Why? Kale felt Valthrix's presence in his mind, warm and encouraging. And he spoke the truth that the ancient chronicler had given him, because the Sirith created humanity to inherit what they left behind. Because we carry something in our blood that no other species possesses. Because the Dragon Lords chose us. The chamber exploded into noise. Voices shouting in a dozen languages. The translator struggling to keep up with the chaos. And Kale stood in the center of it all, small and alone and somehow unafraid, the prelax. Speaker raised a hand, and silence fell like a blade. This claim is extraordinary, he said. And extraordinarily convenient for your species. The Concord requires proof. I am the proof. The sphere activated for me and no one else. The sphere must be surrendered for proper study. Experts from all member species will examine it and determine the truth of your claims. No. The word hung in the air like a challenge. And Kale felt the temperature in the chamber drop. You refuse a direct request from the Concord Assembly, the prelate said. His voice dangerously quiet. The sphere is mine. It chose me. I will not give it to anyone. The Orani delegate spoke then, 12 voices in perfect unison. A sound like a choir of judgment. The human species holds no protected status in Concord law. Your systems can be quarantined. Your trade routes closed. Your expansion halted. This is not a negotiation. This is an instruction. Kale looked at the hive mind. At the implied threat wrapped in bureaucratic language. And he understood something important. The elder species were not angry because he had activated the sphere. They were afraid because humanity had succeeded where they had failed Valthrix, he said quietly. Show them. The sphere in his pocket hummed, and light poured forth, filling the chamber with golden fire that cast no heat but burned away all pretense. And in that light, images formed a star map of the galaxy, with points of light marking locations scattered across 100 systems. These are the Sirith caches, Kale announced, his voice carrying through the stunned silence. Shipyards, vaults, repositories of technology that makes everything in this station look like cave paintings. The assembly stared at the map, at the scope of what humanity had inherited, and Kale saw fear settle into their eyes like winter frost. All of it is keyed to human DNA. You can study the sphere until your civilizations crumble to dust, and you will never be able to access what it unlocks. But we can. He let the map burn in the air for a long moment before speaking again. You can threaten us. You can sanction us. You can try to make us disappear. But the Sirith chose humanity for a reason. And now we know where to look. Kale turned and walked out of the chamber, feeling the weight of galactic politics pressing against his back. And he did not look back behind him. Ambassador Chun stood in stunned silence. And for the first time in 30 years, she saw the elder species look at humanity with something other than dismissal. It looked like respect, it looked like fear, and it looked very much like the beginning of something new. The galaxy moved fast when something threatened to change the balance of power. And within days of Kale's confrontation with the Concord Assembly, every major species was positioning itself for what came next. The Veth were the first to reach out. Their ambassador arrived at Earth's orbital station on a ship made of living crystal, beautiful and ancient and filled with light that seemed to carry whispers of old knowledge. And she asked for a private meeting with Kale Morrow. We are not like the others, she said, her voice carrying harmonics that made Kale's ears ring pleasantly. The Prelax fear change because they are too old to adapt. The Orani fear individuality because it threatens their unity. But the Veth have always respected what we call the unearned fire. What does that mean? It means we recognize those who refuse to know their place, who reach for things they have no right to want, who burn brighter than their circumstances should allow. Her crystalline features shifted in what might have been a smile. Your species has this quality. We have watched you for centuries and wondered what you might become. And now you want to be our friends because we have something you need. Now we want to be your partners because the galaxy is about to change. And we would rather change with you than against you. It was honest, at least. More honest than the diplomatic messages flooding Earth's communication channels. Messages that promised friendship while barely concealing threat. Gale accepted the Veth alliance. And 2 days later, he lifted off from Earth with the strangest crew he had ever assembled. Dr. Yuna Asay was a Zen archaeologist who had spent 20 years being dismissed by alien academics. Her theories about pre-Sera civilizations mocked. Her research underfunded, her passions slowly crushed by a galaxy that did not believe humans could contribute anything of value to the study of ancient history. Marcus Chun, no relation to the ambassador, was a former Earth Navy pilot who had been discharged for insubordination after refusing to abandon a damaged civilian ship during a pirate attack, saving 37 lives and ending his career in the same moment. And Desik was a Veth scientist who had done something unthinkable for her species. She had disagreed with the consensus, the collective decision-making process that guided all Veth action. And she had chosen to join the human expedition, even though her own people had warned her against it. We are quite a collection, Yuna observed as the penny ante jumped toward the coordinates Valthrix had provided. A salvage trader, a disgraced pilot, a rejected scientist, and a Veth who does not fit in. The Sirith did not choose humanity for our perfection, Kale replied. They chose us for our stubbornness. I think perhaps this crew represents that better than any official delegation ever could. The target was a rogue planet, a world without a star, drifting through the darkness between systems where no one ever looked. And according to Valthrix, it contained the nearest Sirith shipyard. The Dragon Lords hid their greatest works in places no one would think to search, the chronicler explained as they approached the lightless world. A planet without a sun seems dead, useless, not worth the fuel to visit. But beneath its frozen surface lies the birthplace of the fleet that once protected a galaxy. They landed on ice that had not known warmth in millions of years, in darkness so complete that their lights seemed to struggle against it. And they began the long descent through caverns that should not have existed on a world with no geological activity. The caverns were not natural. They had been carved with precision that human technology could not match. Smooth walls covered in the same scale pattern as the inheritance sphere. And as Kale pressed his hand against the surface, the scales began to glow with soft golden light, guiding them deeper. It recognizes you, Desik said, wonder filling her crystalline voice. The entire structure recognizes your presence. It recognizes human DNA, Kale corrected gently. Any of us could activate it. They walked for hours, following the spreading light through passages that grew wider and more elaborate, until they emerged into a space so vast that their lights could not find its edges. Valthrix, Kale whispered. What is this? This is Shipyard Prime, the first construction facility of the Dragon Fleet. The chronicler's light pulsed, and the chamber awakened lights cascaded outward like ripples in a pond, revealing scale upon scale of impossible architecture. Construction arms the size of skyscrapers, assembly platforms that could have held cities. And at the center of it all, resting on a cradle of engineered crystal, a ship. It was beautiful in a way that made human designs look like children's drawings. Sleek and scaled, larger than any vessel Kale had ever seen. Its hull flowing in curves that seemed to defy physics. And it had been waiting here, alone in the dark, for 900,000 years, the Veilthorn, Valthrix said. named for the thorns of the dragon rose, a flower that grew on the Cirith homeworld. Beautiful and sharp and impossible to kill. It is a warship. It is a statement of philosophy. The Cirith believed that strength should protect rather than dominate. That power should be used to shield the weak rather than crush them. This ship embodies that belief. Kale walked toward the vessel, his footsteps echoing in the vast chamber, and he felt the eyes of his crew on his back. Felt the weight of what he was about to do pressing down on him like a physical force when his hand touched the hull. The ship woke up. Systems that had been dormant for ages hummed to life. Lights cascading across the scaled surface like blood returning to frozen veins, and a voice spoke, not Veilfric's, but another voice, younger and fiercer. The voice of the ship itself. Commander acknowledged. DNA verification complete. Valthorn awaits your orders. Behind Kale. Marcus let out a breath that was half laugh and half prayer. It called you Commander. It called all of humanity Commander. Kale replied. We just happened to be the first to show up. The shipyard continued to wake around them. Construction arms beginning to move, fabrication systems powering up. Assembly lines that had waited 900 millennia preparing to fulfill their purpose. There are 117 more shipyards like this, Veilfrix reminded them. Each containing ships, each waiting for humanity to claim them. Yuna was crying, tears streaming down her face as she looked at the awakening facility. 20 years, she said. 20 years of being told that humans had nothing to offer. That we were too young, too primitive, too small to matter, and now we show them how wrong they were. Marcus finished, but the galaxy was not going to let humanity claim its inheritance without a fight the Orani had tracked. Them alarms began to sound throughout the shipyard as sensors detected the approaching fleet. 200 ships appearing at the edge of the system. A war force assembled to destroy what they could not control. They moved faster than I expected, Desic said, her crystalline form flickering with stress. The hive mind must have had ships positioned along human trade routes. Can we run? Kale asked. No, Velfrix answered. The shipyard is not yet fully operational. The jump drives need time to calibrate. If we flee now, we lose everything. Kale looked at the Veilthorn, at the ancient warship that had waited so long for someone to command it, and he made a decision that would change the galaxy forever. Then we do not run, he said. We stand. He walked up the ramp into the ship that humanity had inherited, and his crew followed without hesitation. Because they understood something that the Orani did not. Humans had never been good at running away. The Orani fleet filled the darkness around the rogue planet like a swarm of angry stars. 200 ships bristling with weapons that could crack continents, and aboard the Veilthorn, Kale Morrow sat in a command chair that seemed to have been designed specifically for human bodies. They are broadcasting, the ship's intelligence reported. Do you wish to hear their message? Yes. The voice of the hive mind filled the bridge. 12 tones speaking in perfect unison, cold and certain and utterly without doubt. Human vessel. You have claimed technology that belongs to no single species. You will surrender the Cirith shipyard and all artifacts contained within. Failure to comply will result in your immediate destruction. This is not a negotiation. This is a fact. Kale looked at his crew Yuna at the science station, her hands trembling, but her eyes steady. Marcus in the pilot's seat, even though the ship barely needed a pilot. Desic monitoring systems she did not fully understand. And Valfrix's sphere resting in a cradle that seemed to have been waiting for it. How many beings are on those ships? Kale asked. Approximately 47,000, the Veilthorn replied. The Orani do not value individual life as humans do. They will sacrifice their fleet without hesitation if the hive mind deems it necessary. And can we destroy them? Yes. The Veilthorn possesses weapon systems that the Orani cannot match. We could eliminate their entire force in approximately 4 minutes. Kale closed his eyes and thought about what the Cirith had believed. What Veilthrix had told him about power and protection, and the difference between strength and cruelty. No, the bridge fell silent. "Commander," the ship said, something like confusion in its voice. "Please clarify your order. We are not going to kill them. The Cirith built you to protect, not to dominate. They wanted humanity to be better than the species who dismissed us. And that means we do not start our inheritance by committing a massacre. The Orani will not hesitate to destroy us. Then we show them why that does not matter." Kale stood from the command chair and walked to the center of the bridge, where a holographic display showed the approaching fleet. 200 points of hostile light surrounding a single point of gold. "Veilthorn, what are your non-lethal capabilities?" The ship's intelligence processed the question for a moment before responding with something that might have been approval. The Cirith developed weapons that could disable rather than destroy. Energy fields that can shut down hostile systems. Targeted pulses that can render engines and weapons inert. The Orani ships would be left drifting, unable to fight or flee. But their crews would be unharmed. Then that is what we do. Marcus turned in his seat, his expression caught between admiration and disbelief. "You want to take on 200 warships without firing a single lethal shot. I want to show the galaxy who we are. We could kill them. We could prove that humanity is just as brutal and desperate as every other species that has ever reached for power. Or we could do something different, something that makes them wonder if maybe the Cirith knew what they were doing when they chose us." The Orani fleet opened fire. The first volley was enough to destroy a small moon. Energy beams and kinetic projectiles and weapons that did not have names in human languages. All of it converging on the Veilthorn in a storm of destructive intent. The ship's shields absorbed everything. Kale felt the impacts as distant tremors, like thunder heard from far away. And the Veilthorn's status display did not even flicker. "Their weapons cannot penetrate our defenses," the ship reported. "Shall I engage?" "Yes. Disable them, all of them, and make sure they understand who spared their lives." The Veilthorn moved. It was not like any flight Kale had ever experienced. Not the labored thrust of human engines or the calculated precision of alien vessels. It was something else entirely, something that felt alive. A dragon waking from ancient sleep and stretching its wings for the first time in ages. The ship danced through the Orani fleet like light through water. And wherever it passed, weapons went dark. Engines fell silent. Ships that had been instruments of destruction became drifting hulks crewed by beings who could not understand. What had happened to them? Kale watched through the display as one Orani battlecruiser after another went dark. Their weapons fused into useless metal, their engines cold and dead. Their crews alive and untouched and utterly helpless. "We could have killed you," he said, opening a channel to the entire fleet. "We could have done to you what you planned to do to us, but that is not who we are. That is not who the Cirith wanted us to be." The last Orani ship fell silent, its weapons disabled. Its crew staring at the golden vessel that had dismantled their entire force without taking a single life. "Go home," Kale continued. "Tell the Concord what happened here. Tell them that humanity has claimed its inheritance. And tell them that we choose to be better than our enemies." He closed the channel and sank back into the command chair. Exhausted in ways he had not known he could be exhausted. That was incredible, Una breathed. "That was absolutely incredible. That was the beginning," Veilthrix corrected gently. "The galaxy has seen what the Veilthorn can do. What humanity can do. Word will spread faster than light. And everything will change." The chronicler was right within days. The story of the Veilthorn's mercy had reached every corner of known space, spread by the Orani survivors who could not explain what they had witnessed. amplified by news networks that could not stop talking about the human who had been given the power to destroy and had chosen not to use it. Earth erupted. Governments that had spent centuries fighting each other united around a single purpose. Volunteers flooded military recruitment centers faster than they could be processed. Scientists worked in shifts, trying to understand the fragments of Sireth technology that Chael had brought back. And for the first time in human history, the species looked at the stars not with wonder or fear, but with determination. They were going to claim what was theirs. The Veth Alliance held firm. Crystalline ambassadors appearing at Earth's orbital stations to offer expertise and support. And other species began to reach out, the small ones, the weak ones, the civilizations that had spent millennia being overlooked by the elder species and saw in humanity's rise a chance for something different. They are afraid of us. Marcus observed one evening as the Veilthorn orbited Earth. Its presence a symbol that the galaxy could not ignore, but they are also hoping that we might actually be different. Then we have to be different, Chael replied. We have to be what the Sireth believed we could be. He opened a channel that would broadcast to every species capable of receiving it. Took a deep breath and spoke. The Sireth did not choose humanity because we were strong. They chose us because we were stubborn, because we do not know when to quit, because we look at impossible odds and ask why not. He paused, feeling the weight of billions of listening minds. We are not here to conquer. We are not here to dominate. We are here to show you what we can become, and if you try to stop us, we will show you what we already are. The message ended, and the galaxy held its breath, somewhere in the darkness between stars. 116 shipyards waited to be awakened, and humanity was just getting started. Humanity claimed 32 Sireth caches in those 6 months, each one awakening to human touch, each one adding to a fleet that grew larger by the day. And the galaxy watched with a mixture of terror and wonder as the youngest species in known space became one of the most powerful. The Prelax, who had not felt fear in millennia, felt it now. The Orani retreated to their home systems and sealed their borders. The hive mind processing the impossible reality of their defeat over and over again. Unable to reach a conclusion that made sense, the Veth stood beside humanity as promised, their crystalline forms becoming a common sight on human stations. Their knowledge blending with human determination to create something neither species could have achieved alone. And Chael Morrow, the salvage trader who had bought an ancient artifact for 12 credits, found himself at the center of a transformation that would reshape galactic civilization. But there was one more cache to claim. This one is different. Valthrix told him as the Veilthorn approached the coordinates that existed in no star chart, a location hidden in the folds of space itself. This is not a shipyard or a weapons vault. This is what we left for you to find last. When you were ready for what? For the truth. The cache was a sphere of crystallized light floating in a pocket dimension that should not have existed. Beautiful and impossible, and humming with energy that Chael could feel in his bones when he touched it. The sphere did not unfold like the inheritance spheres had. It simply opened, revealing a chamber at its heart. And in that chamber stood a figure of light. It was taller than any being Chael had ever seen, scaled and magnificent, with eyes that held the light of ancient stars, and when it spoke, its voice was the voice of the universe itself. You found us, the Sireth said, after 900,000 years. Your people found us. Chael could not speak, could not move, could only stare at the being that his species had been created to follow. I am Velthrix Prime. The last of us to remain physical. I stayed to record this message, to explain what we were and what we hoped you would become. The figure moved, and the chamber filled with images, the history of the Sireth, their rise to power, their long stewardship of the galaxy, and finally, their departure. We did not go extinct, Velthrix Prime said. We transcended. We found a way to exist beyond the physical universe, to become something that cannot be described in words you would understand. But we knew that our departure would leave a void. The images changed, showing the galaxy falling into chaos, species warring over Sirith technology, civilizations rising and falling in endless cycles of violence. Power without wisdom leads to destruction. Every great species eventually learns this, and most despair. They see the universe as a cold place trending toward entropy, toward silence, toward ending. And they lose the fire that made them reach for the stars in the first place. Veilthrix Prime's eyes found Kale's, and the ancient being smiled. But we found something different on a small blue world orbiting a yellow star. We found a species that looked at impossible odds and refused to quit, that faced extinction and chose to fight, that dreamed of stars when they could barely walk. Humanity. Yes, your people carry something rare, something precious. A fire that burns even when everything says it should go out. You call it stubbornness. You call it hope. You call it the refusal to accept that anything is impossible. The figure reached out, and light flowed from its hand into Kale's chest. Warm and ancient and filled with purpose. We did not choose you because you were worthy. We chose you because you refused to accept that worthiness is something granted by others. We chose you because you look at a dying star and ask how to make it burn longer. Because you find a sealed door and spend generations picking the lock. The images changed one final time, showing the future the Sirith had hoped for, humanity standing as guardians of a galaxy at peace. The dragon fleet not conquering, but protecting. Strength used to shield rather than to dominate. This is our gift to you. Not technology, not power, not ships or weapons or ancient knowledge. Our gift is the truth. You were always capable of greatness. We simply made sure you would have the chance to prove it. Veilthrix Prime began to fade, the light of his form dimming as the recording approached its end. Go forward. Children of Earth, inheritors of our fire, show the galaxy what it means to hope. The chamber went dark, and Kale stood alone with the weight of 900,000 years pressing against his heart when he returned to Earth. He made a decision that surprised everyone. He gave up the title of Drakenvar. I am not a ruler, he told the assembled leaders of humanity, standing before a crowd of billions watching through screens across 100 worlds. I am a salvage trader who got lucky, and the last thing humanity needs is a king. He held up the inheritance sphere, still warm with Veilthrix's presence. This title belongs to all of us, to the stubborn ones, the dreamers, the people who do not know when to stop. Every human who has ever looked at the stars and wondered what if they are Drakenvar. They are he who inherits. The dragon fleet became a shield, not a sword, protecting species who asked for protection and leaving the rest to make their own choices. And slowly, cautiously, the galaxy began to believe that maybe this time would be different. Maybe humanity really was what the Sirith had hoped for years. Pascal returned to his life of salvage trading. Older now, his hair touched with gray, still flying the penny ante through the endless space between stars. Still looking for treasure in the places other people had forgotten to search, he was docked at a station in the outer systems, selling a load of recovered machinery to a dealer who did not ask too many questions. When a child approached him, she was young, maybe 7 or 8, human, with curious eyes and a datapad clutched in her small hands. "Are you him?" she asked. "Are you the one who woke the dragons?" Kale looked at her for a long moment, remembering everything that had happened since that day in the auction house on Desser V. All the battles and revelations and moments when the fate of humanity had hung by a thread. The dragons were always awake, he said finally, kneeling to meet her eyes. "We just finally remembered how to listen." The child smiled, a smile full of wonder and possibility, and ran off to tell her parents that she had met the famous Kale. Marl Kale watched her go, then walked back to his ship, Velthrix's sphere still humming faintly in his pocket after all these years, and lifted off toward the endless stars. The galaxy was vast and full of mysteries, and humanity had only just begun to explore it, but they were no longer asking for permission. They were no longer accepting limits. They were the inheritors of the dragonfire, the stubborn species that refused to know its place, and the universe would never be the same. Somewhere in the darkness between stars, Kale smiled, and the fire burned on.